Good evening, everyone. I, Kshitij Sharma, a student of second year DME Media School,
And I, Khushi Chaudhary, a student of first year DME Media School.
welcome you all to the last session of day 6, where we are going to have a third panel discussion of the world's first 10-day digital live international conference, ICAN. Despite the global pandemic, DME Media School, in collaboration with School of Communication and Creative Arts, Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia, is holding this most awaited conference internationally through virtual means. We are extremely happy to announce that ICAN4 is being supported by Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR.
Before starting with the discussion, I would like to brief you all about the previous editions of ICAN that were indeed a bag full of knowledge. ICAN 1, held in March 2018, was based on the theme India and changing aspects of news. ICAN 2, held in November 2018, was all about Indian and alternate networks. And ICAN 3, the first online edition of the conference, was held in June 2020, and the theme was issues of community, agenda, and news with the hashtag of Conference for Change. The theme for this year's conference is Information, Communication, and Artificial Networks, and the hashtag is Communication Redefined.
Under the ICAN4 that I'd like our listeners to know. The participation of about 60 eminent scholars from 5 continents and 11 countries, namely India, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Bangladesh, USA, Mexico, France, Italy, Australia, and Ghana. More than 100 media educators and researchers have gathered to present their papers in the conference. There are 36 live sessions scheduled, including 9 technical sessions, 3 workshops, 7 panel discussions, 3 special sessions, and 10 masterclasses. And how wonderful it is that all 9 technical sessions are being chaired and co chaired by women scholars representing different states of the country.
ICANN 4 would not have been possible without the support of our partners. We would like to thank our partners. Knowledge partners are K.R. Manglam University, Gurugram, Haryana, Adamas University, Kolkata, Makhanlal Chaturvedi, National University of Journalism and Mass Communication, Bhopal, and Vigyan Prasad, Government of India. And our academic partner is Department of Communication and Journalism, Guwahati University, and our international partner is Institute for International Journalism, EW Scripps School of Journalism, Ohio University, USA. And our media partner is the Policy Times.
DME Media School, in collaboration with School of Communication and Creative Arts, Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia, takes immense pride in staying a foot ahead while working for this day where we all share screens together to treat us with the most knowledgeable discussions, deliberations, and thoughts.
I would like to extend my warm regards towards SPARK, the Student Council of DME Media School, that stands for Students with Positive Attitude and Resonating Communication. And also towards the Journalism at DME, which is the official newsletter of the DME Media School. This fortnightly publication covers all the major activities in and out of the campus. It is a student-centric newsletter carried out entirely by them under the supervision of faculty members. You can also check out DME TV, the official YouTube channel of DME, where you can find the playlist related to all the sessions, lecture series, film festival, and conference. We are streaming live on the official Facebook page of ICAN for all our panel discussions, masterclasses, and special sessions. Now, I would like to request Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Director DME Studios and Production, Director International Relations at Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida, to please say a few words. Over to you, sir.
Welcome everybody here in this evening of the 6th day of the conference. This is a 10-day conference, as we all know. And today, since morning, we have been having different kind of sessions. In the morning only, we had a panel discussion, which was moderated by Sean Redmond from Deakin University, Australia. And then we had a technical session followed by a master class. So the whole conference is a mix of panel discussion, master classes. And obviously, since it's a research-based conference, so technical sessions have to be there in all. We have 9 technical sessions wherein the authors, the researchers, they are making presentation of their papers. So I'm really grateful to Dr. Jatin Srivastava to conceive and to plan these sessions for us, which have added value to the whole conference. The other day there was a session on this introduction of the online education and the changes which have come in online education since the time this pandemic has struck the entire world. Today, again, we are talking about media education in the light of the technological advancement or technological innovations that have happened over the years. And obviously, we are sure that we will get a global perspective as far as the future of media education is concerned. So I welcome everybody. I welcome Professor Dev, Professor Sundeep to be with us this evening. And we all are waiting for some fruitful discussion to happen in this session. Thank you all.
Thank you for your insightful words, sir. Well, this panel discussion is on a very crucial topic that we all can relate within today's time: technological innovations and the future of media education. The session is being presided by Dr. Jatin Srivastava. He is an associate professor and the director of the for International Journalism at EW Scripps School of Journalism at Ohio University. His recent research is rooted in theory based exploration of the new media environment, and his teaching experience ranges from graduate seminars in mass communication theory and research methods to undergraduate courses on graphic design and media literacy. We also have Dr. Deb Aikat as one of our panelists. A former journalist, Dr. Deb Aikat has more than 25 years of experience as a faculty and has been serving in Hussman School of Journalism and Media at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. An award-winning scholar, Mr. Aikat was selected as the 2021 Vice President of AEJMC, one of the premier scholarly organizations. He will serve as the AEJMC President for the 2022 to 2023 for AEJMC Conference in Washington, D.C. Sir joined AEJMC members in 2015 to institute the South Asia Communication Association, which has brought together 1,625 scholars and professionals in examining media and communication in South Asia, and its DISAPRO Worldwide SAC is an association collaboration for this conference. He worked as a journalist in India for the Anand Bazar Patrika's The Telegraph newspaper from 1984 to 1992. He also reported for the BBC World Service. Sir has earned a certificate in American political culture from New York University and a PhD from Ohio University. The Scripps Howard Foundation recognized Aikat as the inaugural winner of the National Journalism Teacher of the Year 2003 for his distinguished service to journalism education. An award-winning scholar, Mr. Aikat is co-author of the 2019 book, Agenda Building: News, Social Media Audiences, and Civic Community with Don Shaw, Millard Moni, and Chris Wago. The book theorizes how audience mail the media messages in our 21st century digital age. The book has also recognized as a winning title in the 2016 AEJMC Peter Lang Scholar Sourcing Competition, and also this book marks the 50th anniversary of the seminal agenda setting study that was conducted in UNC Chapel Hill in 1968. The Scripps Howard Foundation recognized Dr. Aikat as the inaugural winner of the National Journalism Teacher of the Year 2003 for his distinguished service to journalism education.
We are also honored to have Dr. Sundeep Muppidi as a panelist for this discussion. He is the chair of the Institutional Review Board and a professor of communication in the College of Arts and Sciences, University of Hartford, USA. Sir has over 25 years of experience globally in teaching, administration, and research. He teaches graduate and undergraduate courses in new media, television, and multimedia production, international communication, and research methods. He is a recognized pedagogical expert, a teaching with the technology awardee of the Faculty Center for the Learning Development, a Davis Grant awardee for flipping the classroom strategies, and a trained peer reviewer of the teaching PRT for the Center for Teaching Excellence and Innovation CTEI, among others. He also co-chairs the UHA Teaching with Technology Facebook group that provides COVID-19 pedagogical support for faculty at the University of Hartford. He has a doctorate in mass communication from Bowling Green State University, Ohio, and a Master's of Arts in the Communication from the University of Hyderabad, India. He has published 3 co-authored and edited books, over 50 book chapters and other articles, created numerous media productions, and given over more than 75 refereed conference presentations, and contributed in various talks and discussions. He is the editor-in-chief of the Asia Pacific Media Educator Journal. His research interests are in the international communication, media education, and communication for social change and empowerment. He has a number of leadership experiences in various roles in higher education, non-profit administration at 3 institutions, the University of Hartford, Eastern City State University, and the Asia Media Information and Communication Center. Dr. Muppidi also has substantial leadership training and certifications, including from the American Council on Education, ACE, and AGAMC, Journalism Leadership Institute for Diversity, JLID, and the Harvard's Management Development Program, MDP. He has won the Best Contribution to Asian Industry Award at the Asian Publishing Convention in 2012 in the Malaysia. And we also have Ms. Sunetra Narayan among us as our panelist. She has about 30 years of experience in communication spanning print journalism, documentary film production, teaching, and research. She has studied economics at Delhi University. She was awarded a master's in telecommunication studies and a doctorate in mass communication from the Pennsylvania State University, USA. She has teaching experience both in India and US. She currently teaches courses in her areas of expertise. Her areas of expertise include development, international communications, and new media. She is currently professor at Indian Institute of Mass Communications, New Delhi. She is the head of Department of Health Communications at IIMC. She joined the institute in 23. And she has head of the Department of Development Journalism from 2004 to 2013. She has been the editor of the academic journal Communicator from 2008 to 2016 and from 2019 to 20. Prior to this, she has been a print journalist, writing on business and travel in India. She is the author of Globalization and Television, a study of Indian experience, 1919 to 2010. She is the co-editor of India Connected, mapping the impact of new media. She has written numerous scholarly articles on communications and development-related subjects. She is currently working on a new book on social messaging in India, which is co-authored.
And our final panelist for today's session is Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey. Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey is Associate Professor and Head, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Surendranath College for Women, University of Calcutta, Kolkata, India, since September 2002. He completed his Master's and PhD in Journalism and Mass Communication from the University of Calcutta, Kolkata. He completed his graduation with honors in physics from University of Calcutta in 1996. He is a PhD supervisor in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, University of Calcutta. He qualified for NET, JRF and L in Mass Communication in December 1999. He is the first India ambassador of the International Association for Media and Communication. Research IAMCR, the preeminent global association for media and communication research. He completed the study for the United States Institute program organized by the United States Department of State, conducted at the Ohio University, USA in July-August 2015. Dr. Pandey is a member board of studies at a number of Indian universities. He has presented papers at a number of international conferences at Minneapolis, Madrid, San Francisco, San Juan, Seattle, Leicester, London, Dublin, Durban, Istanbul, Shanghai, Ho Chi Minh City, Bangkok, Colombo, and Kathmandu. Before joining academics, he was a senior journalist with English National Daily, the Asian Age, Kolkata. Also an editorial board member of a number of international journals, he has published over 25 papers in referred journals and has authored 4 books. He was awarded the Best Media Educator of India award by the Business World in November 2018. He has conducted training programs and workshops for corporate communicators, teachers, journalists, and students at different parts of the country on themes including data journalism, conversational intelligence, big data, media literacy, social media analytics, Creative Commons, journalists, job satisfaction, framing of election, news, etc. Research interests include data journalism, framing of election news, media credibility, journalistic role perception. He's also visiting faculty at a number of national and international universities and institutions. He's also worked as SPSS, Python, Adobe Premiere Pro, Quark Express, and Adobe Photoshop. Thank you all of you for accepting our invitations and holding this panel discussion. We are pleased to have you here with us. Now, I request Dr. Jatin Srivastava to please carry the session forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kshitij and Khushi, and thank you for for introducing our eminent panelists. So today we are going to talk about it. Some ground rules. I hope it's perfectly fine if we just go by first names. We have four panelists. We have Deb and Sundeep and Sunetra and Puma Shankarji. What we will do, we will start with with some opening comments. Every panelist will can take up to 5-6 minutes and talk about how they think about where how media education is related to technology. One salient thing or a few salient things they think mattered in the past might matter in the future, and so on. Once that part is done, then we will go to the questions. I will ask a question, invite a speaker, invite a panelist. Once one panelist answers, I will invite other panelists, and I will go in the order of the last name. However, if you want to respond to a panelist, please feel free to do so. If you want to interject, that's wonderful. That this is something that we have to do to keep things a bit organized in the online environment. I would emphasize very strongly that panels like this often are driven by interactions, feedback from the audience, and we have a big audience. So there are around 69 people who are in this meeting. There are people who are logged on their Facebook or YouTube streaming. So so please feel free to post your comments, queries, anything you want to to ask panelists in the chat window. We have used the chat window very effectively in the past session, and I hope we are able to do that in this session too. Okay? So please feel free to do so. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about language. Just type it out. If you have a thought, please type it out. Okay? I am very glad to see a good number of students here, and and your feedback would be especially useful, because most of the things we are going to talk about, you are going to experience it, in a very different way, the way we are going to do. So with that said, let's start with the opening comments. I would invite Dr. Deb Aikat to share his ideas for around 5 to 6 minutes. Over to you, Deb.
So I just made some slides, and I will skip all of them because or some of them, because you all have done a great job of introducing everybody. But I wanted to say how honored I am to be with you all today. This is a panel of very key people, and I'm looking forward to our interaction today. So my first thing, Dr. Srivastava asked us to talk about technology and how it's transforming media education. As you can see, this century, the 21st century, has been marked by a lot of innovations, and those innovations are in front of you. In fact, I spoke at a business school, and I used the same slide to share how these innovations have affected our lives. So one of the first challenges we have, and ICAN4 has several sessions that address that, is how we use this technology. If you look at these icons or these logos very carefully, at any given time, you would be an expert on 6 of them. But our students are expert on another 6 of them, and it doesn't match always. So that's one thing that I feel we need to work on. And I feel one of the things that ICAN4 and other venues can focus is how we can bring this to the classroom, not only for teaching or for research. I think that on that note, I'm going to just end my little perspective on what I would like to share for to respond to Jatin's question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deb. Sundeep, your thoughts?
I don't have any PowerPoint, so, yeah, I mean, if I wanted to give an introduction to media education, it doesn't matter what technology, it doesn't matter what medium. I think at the top, media education has a primary responsibility to sort of harness the potential of every individual. But from creation to production to consumption, it's about making everyone or each media professional, giving them the tools, the techniques, but also making them sort of creative, critical consumers, and with a responsibility of carrying out the function of either informing or entertaining or educating their audiences, which we badly need today. If you look around at the echo chambers people live in, at the disinformation that's prevalent, at the number of sources that you see in terms of information. So it primarily comes down to about 5 things, I think, 4 or 5 things, right? First is, as a student, if your education can help you develop a worldview, right? And we can talk about each of them later, but situating your worldview, developing your ideology, identifying your lens. What is the lens through which you look at this world? And building your expertise and skills. That will include technological skills, subject skills, networking skills, your portfolio, all those kinds of things. But overall, helping you become a critical, conscientious consumer and producer of media. I think media education would have done its job. So
thank you, Sundeep. Now, before we move to Sunetra, a quick question for the audience. If you could, especially the students in the audience, if you would, could you please type in the chat window what you think is going to be the most important thing in your future or in your future lives? So I'm looking forward to your response. So please go ahead and type it out. Now, let's move to Sunetra. Sunetra.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Jatin, for thinking of me for this panel. I'd like to thank Dr. Saxena. It's really, and my co-panelists, it's really an honor to be here with such eminent panelists, and of course yourself. It's always a pleasure. So thank you very much. I'll take a slightly different take to the topic, because the value of maybe working in India through this difficult period of the pandemic has opened our eyes to the immediacy of technological innovation. And with Indians, it's always a jugaad innovation that was required, because it was like I was in class one evening in March, and I got a message that there may be a lockdown. I said, what's a lockdown? That this virus. Well, I thought, okay, it'll take a week. I'll adapt. We'll design the classes. That was my last physical interaction. 10 minutes later, the class was over. The next day, the institute was closed. And I didn't know what Zoom was. So, that's how technology has entered, the immediacy. But not to expand too much on it, but I think I'll talk a little about our perspective going forward. We still have 400 million Indians who are not on the internet. We still have while 90% of, let's say, even our students at IMC, who are a privileged bunch to be at IMC, they're taking their classes on a smartphone. Their preferred way of connecting with the internet, at least half of them, is a mobile prepaid pack. The rest of them, about 40%, are using home Wi-Fi. These are just some loose, rough idea. This is based on some student research at IMC, based on his, one student at IMC who's conducted some research. So these are just current things that are happening as we speak. But if we really want to talk about, from our perspective, technology and innovation and media education, I think we also have to look at, beyond just technology, because looking at the social sciences, we have to maybe ask the big questions. Is it information technology? Is it biotechnology? Are we at like Harari says, a point of like nihilism? In his book, which came out in 2018, when he talks about technological innovations. But the pandemic has really increased that sense of being at a nihilistic place. So at the same time, we ourselves have engaged in a exponential, I'll just take another 1 minute, I won't overshoot. Engaged in technology for teaching like never before. We're running a fully, online semester. So we are directly grappling with some of these things, which in a normal situation without a pandemic would have taken 5 or 10 years maybe for us to be this immersed in it. As teachers, as students, no, they are much more technologically, advanced. So I'll just, these are just some thoughts. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunetra. Shankarji.
Thanks, Jatin, for having me, and thank you for this panel. When we talk of media education in India, probably there are a lot of differences we can talk of right at the beginning. Initially, we had the journalists, demanding a course that we need some kind of a course, and that's how it began in in the pre-independence era. And post-independence, and especially in the last 20 or 30 years, or especially in the last 20 years, there is a special kind of I would call it the political economy of media education, which takes it into 2 or 3 different directions. One is, the Institute of National Importance, like Sunetra ma'am's institute, the IAMC and all, and the way they go on. Another is the state-run universities and the government-sponsored universities, and the third is the private universities and private institutions. And then you have what is known as the difference between the knowledge component and the skill component. And that is where there are stark differences between what is the the government aided and the government sponsored institutions doing, and what are the private institutions doing. So for a long time, we've been having all these MA, BA, and MPhil and all these courses, especially in the government sector institutions and all. And in the private sector institutions, it's the skill component, those jazzy sets, and those kind of wonderful television studios and things that would attract students from a particular class of society. But the crux or the thrust has always been on media education, on media almost as a training program. So a lot of our institutions, or a lot of these institutions that come up, of course there are exceptions, about a lot of these institutions which take this humanities route or the cultural studies route or whatever. But a majority of our institutions are still a kind of a media training program, and it's there in the national education policy also. And in the course of our discussion, I'll discuss about that in greater details. The national education policy talks about certain things, certain very positive things. One of them is, dismantling the boundaries between, curricular and extracurricular, between curricular and co-curricular, and also the boundaries between academic and vocational. And these are the things probably that we will have to deal with when we talk about the future. Because as I just to repeat myself, that when we talk of a certain kind of technology, then that technology is more of an instrument, or the fact that I have access to that technology is more of an instrument to draw in more people of a certain kind into my institutions. And at the other level, we have these government institutes, which are I'm not talking of institutes of national importance like the IMC, but many others, where there are always short of funds, there are always short of resources. And that's where there's this cleavage, that's where there's this divergence, where one area is more about the knowledge component, and it's more about the knowledge component of media. Because, it will talk about history of journalism, it will talk about, media economics and all these things. And the other side will talk or will demonstrate their capabilities with this new technology and expensive technology. So as we go along, I'll further expound on many of these things, but these are my initial remarks.
Thank you, Shankarji. So one of the things that happens when we start thinking about communication, mass communication, media education is essentially what we are focusing on. There are people who say, if you're focusing on media education, you are talking more about media, but you're not talking about the process that is communication. My degrees, my master's was in mass communication, my PhD was in communication. I teach at a school of journalism, and so and as Shankarji and many of you said, it's a very multidisciplinary field. So people come from different areas. My research is more closer to psychology than many other people. A lot of people do research which is closer to what people doing sociological work do. So it is a big crossroad where so it seems to be a field which is very diverse. But when we interpret it for educational purposes, when we say, all right, this is how I'm going to teach it, we have to make decisions. And all four of your schools have very different histories or how you approach your media communication, mass communication related education. So the next thing I would like to talk about is how do you, so we have many labels. And there was a time, when I was talking to Deb yesterday, and he was saying that it's getting very interesting because in the school, so in many of schools, at least in the United States, in journalism schools, we have journalism education, so news and information, but we also have education for strategic communication, so public relations, advertising. So the same school is teaching both, and these two have always been in conflict, and so Dev was talking about this, he was saying that, so when something bad happens at the university, the public relations students, their first instinct is to kind of cover it up or to manage it, whereas the journalists want to bring it out. So there is this internal conflict. So there are people and reporters I've talked to, and they talk about search engine optimization, so essentially reporters being trained in how Google works or how search engines work or how their work would be shared and selected. And so essentially how to market your work. And those are the things which kind of bring the marketing aspect and the news aspect very close, which traditionally, there have been efforts to keep them separate. So all those things. So I think when we get into these things, labels start mattering quite a bit. So I'll start with Deb, and the question is that how do you think about the three major terms, communication, mass communication, and journalism in the context of education? How does your institution interpret them? How does your history define it? Where do you think we are going in future? Deb.
So that's I would say $1 billion question all over the world. And I say it's $1 billion question because most journalism schools started as schools where former journalists wanted to teach the trade to younger people. Now, you do not need a journalism degree to be an effective journalist, period. And I think the trend of journalism schools is a recent one. The first journalism school to some eminence is the Missouri School of Journalism, founded in 1908. So in the 18th century, you cannot say that there wasn't much journalism done. There was journalism done in this country, in India, like Mahatma Gandhi, as you know, started his life as a lawyer in South Africa, and he published some prominent publications. And then when he came back to India, he had a very prominent contribution. And Mahatma Gandhi, from whatever I recall, did not go to journalism school. He went to a great law school in England, and then his first assignment was South Africa. So that is, in my humble opinion, the power of journalism, or the power of the field we are in. You don't have to go to school to be a practicing journalist. But then let's get to the question that Jatin has placed. Why are journalism schools trying to rename themselves? So our school, which is the Husband School, started as a school of journalism. Then they realized that, oh, we need to expand because we are getting public relations and advertising students. So we said School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Then they realized, oh, there is death of mass communication with social media. Nobody is communicating to the masses, which is not true, right? You still read the Times of India, or you still read all the mainline television entities. In fact, Times of India, as we all know, is one of the largest English newspapers in the world with the circulation and everything. So then we expanded it to journalism and mass communication. And now there are some colleges or schools that would just say College of Media. Just like some of the past ICAN4 sessions did film, right? You covered film, you covered technology. So these lines are blurring. You cannot say on a good day that, hey, I work in advertising, I have nothing to do with filmmaking. Quite honestly, the core of advertising is now filmmaking. You make a very smart ad that's based on good video messages. In fact, think of that, how television has changed. The earlier model was we used to sit in a living room, watch television. Now the television is on your bed or on your bus or on your sofa. It's unlimited or limited by what access you have. So I think our schools have gone through this transformation. That's because of branding. But I think at the root of it all, we are doing the same thing. We are teaching students how to communicate. We are researching important journalism and media issues that are affecting our field. Now, media is used as a catch-all for, like, let's say some of my students now work at Google. Now, they're not doing journalism there. They are trying to develop smart messages by which they would attract online ads. So that was not intended if you are old school journalists. But what are they doing is they're communicating. And even in public relations, I think the public relations is a growing field. And in fact, whether we like it or not, there are more students in public relations in journalism schools in the US than journalism itself. So our field is transforming. And I think a lot of people say, what's in a name? As long as you are teaching students and doing fascinating research and serving the public, you are fine. So my take on this is a lot of journalism schools are changing, are broadening their name to media, College of Media, or media and communication, because they want to attract a large group of students. And strategically, if you are a journalism administrator and you want to bring under your umbrella like filmmaking, Now, somebody would say, well, filmmaking is not journalism. You are wrong. You could have documentary filmmaking that has exposed more stories. Think of the 90s or the 80s when we had Bhagalpur blindings, which was like the police in Bhagalpur was using, they would pour acid on the eyes of the criminals because they wanted to make sure these criminals do not even escape or go anywhere. But that was heinous. Think of what video would have done to enhance the storytelling. So at the root of all we do is storytelling. It is media storytelling. If a journalist is going to do any storytelling, they're not supposed to manipulate. But if an advertiser is doing storytelling, they manipulate all day. In fact, none of their models look what they are. They manipulate every bit of it. So we live in a fun situation where our lines are blurring, and ICAN4 discusses technology. A lot of the technology that we discussed at ICAN4 for the last 8 days or 9 days, depending on your counts, relates to computer science. So what do you think? Should we call ourselves the field of computer science? Not really, because and my wife is a computer scientist. She worries about code. I tell my students, thank God I don't have to worry about code. I worry about communication, which I think, so at the core of it, we are teaching our students communication, whether it's in media, whether it is in journalism, or whether it is in advertising or PR messages. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. So before I go to the, we invite Sundeep, we received 2 comments from the audience. So Suchi Pathak, she talks about lack of transparency as being a very important issue in the future, and I think we are going to talk quite a bit about that. And Anita, talks about building sensitivity towards developmental communication. So essentially on the awareness aspect and reaching the vulnerable, communicating with the vulnerable. And Anita Parihar. So thank you, Anita, and thank you, Suchi. So now Sundeep, over to Sundeep, your thoughts.
I can talk for hours on this question, but I'll not. I mean, Deb was right in terms of journalism in India, but if you look at the birth of communication, right? And communication not as journalism, but understanding of communication as a field, it came together during the World Wars, in the US at least, right? And in terms of understanding the role propaganda could play in manipulating audiences and manipulating people to support the war or not. And Ev Rogers has a nice book in History of Communication Study. He talks about how scientists from political science and sociology and other fields came together and worked at how they could manipulate messages to brainwash people, right? And like any other technology after the wars, it starts coming into common use, and the public relation professionals and advertisers wouldn't like to admit it, but their roots are in propaganda studies in terms of spinning the message. That's so different from journalism, right? So if you're looking at all the different labels, the labels come because as humans, we love to classify and stereotype things. We can't handle a lot of information. We like to label someone as something. So by tagging them, they come with a whole lot of baggage. Now, if you come to the broad field of communication, what I like about it is it's very interdisciplinary. And that's the advantage of communication. That's the disadvantage of communication, because unlike medicine or law or whatever, we can't really have professional guidelines and say, oh, if you have to be a journalist, you have to get a license and you have to do 3 or 4 years of education. Anyone can be a journalist, and anyone can be a communication professional in this day and world. But there's a lot we can get into in terms of the history, in terms of the politics, in terms of career opportunities, in terms of the different kinds of things that have influenced why we label something as communication or media studies or mass communication or journalism or public relations or advertising or things like that. Primarily, I think it comes down to 3 things, right? One, where in the communication process is your emphasis? Are you emphasizing the source, as in television or newspapers or radio or whatever? Are you emphasizing in the process, the source, message, channel, receiver, and audiences? Where are you placing the emphasis in your curriculum? But also whether it's mediated or non-mediated. If it's mediated, you get into all the mass communication kinds of stuff. If it's non-mediated, you get into the individual, interpersonal, group communication kinds of things. So in my view, it's where you're placing the emphasis. And we are a school of communication and cinema. For the last 7 years, once the cinema program joined the School of Communication, the thorniest issue has been trying to figure out what to call the school, because cinema faculty coming at it from an artistic perspective strongly believe they're different from media, while the media faculty believe, oh, cinema is nothing but media. So it depends on who you're talking to, right? And so my perspective depends on what side of the problem are you looking at this from. In India, the confusion is more because the curriculum, even if it's a journalism school, the journalism schools don't offer the same curriculum. Even if it's a communication school, even if they call themselves a media school, the curriculum can be anything. So that I think contributes to the problem. So I'd stop there and let others add to it.
Thank you, Sundeep. And I get a comment from Professor Kiran Bala, who gets to, I believe, what Deb was saying, that innovative ideas in content generation, creativity in storytelling for transmedia forms. So essentially, the commitment to storytelling with different values and different kind of situations. I get a comment from LB Ojha. Very nice to see you here, Ojhaji. And he talks about even interpersonal communication being mediated. Very interesting ideas. Thank you very much, audience, for participating. Please feel free to keep on, sending your comments, and that will help guide our discussion, definitely. Sunetra, your thoughts?
I think in a comparison between the US and India, I think in India we differentiate less between communication, mass communication. Yes, we do differentiate between mass communication and journalism, but I don't find, I may be wrong, I don't find too many programs in speech communication or rhetoric or the theoretical aspects of public speaking in the expansive way that there are programs in the US. I could be wrong. Again, please, somebody feel free to correct me if they are there in India, but I personally have not come across them. But again, maybe I'm not that well informed. Talking about our own institute, I think we do make that distinction between journalism and advertising and public relations. But unlike the US, where mostly you explore these distinctions with further distinctions being added on in terms of filmmaking or speech form, or in India, we have to also look at vernacular languages. So sometimes we end up differentiating. There is an advertising and public relations department, which more often than not is often taught in English. And then there are programs of journalism which could be having similar curriculum, but with slight differentiation, but they would be there in English or Hindi or Marathi or Malayalam or Odia or whatever. And they would have some add-ons to their curriculum, which depends on the specifics of maybe the literature of that language or the way the industry functions in that state. So these are the immediate differences that come to mind. Of course, speaking from our institute's point of view, we just offer postgraduate diploma. We do not have a doctoral program. So maybe there are some doctoral programs which are looking at speech comm and all, but again, there is like a Center for Arts and Aesthetics which came up a few years ago in JNU. They are looking at aspects of filmmaking and cultural studies and so on. But that distinction between speech communication, and I have not come across. I'd be happy if anybody, maybe Umaji can add to that.
Thank you, Sunetra ji. Shankar ji.
Thank you. I mean, as I was saying that we can go hours, on this particular topic. But yeah, I mean, first of all, the heady days of New World Information and Communication Order and the UNESCO movement and all that, and all the institutes of national importance have been set up. The Indian Institute of Technology, the Indian Institute of Management, the Indian Institute of Mass Communication. So it was, it came up, with that kind of a background. And we had, as Dev was saying, we had these stalwarts like Gandhiji and Jawaharlal Nehru and everybody, and everybody had their own newspaper. And the journalism itself played such an important role in the freedom struggle and all that, it was always journalism at the forefront. I wrote a small paper, way back in 2003 on how the journalism department was started in Calcutta University. And there we saw it was in the 1930s that the Indian Journalists Association, petitioned the then British government that we need, some kind of a journalism school. So that is how it started. It was all, media schools, and we had all those big journalists, who were heralding these schools at various places. And then we soon realized that, okay, and also given the Indian predilection of the hero or the heroine, being knowledgeable of so many fields, he should be very good at dancing, he should be very good at horse riding, he should be very good at fighting, he should be very good with technology and everything. So we had these omnibus courses coming up because we wanted number one, to again, to use an American cliche, to cover all bases, so that we could give them advertising, we could give them public relations, we could give them even development communication, and a lot of other things, so that they could be job ready, because that was the idea, to make them a job ready. Now, what happened was that everybody started having courses of very many nomenclatures. I mean, they started branding it very differently. You would have bachelors in mass media and communication, masters in mass communication, master in mass communication and acting, and and fashion, and so have you. I mean, you had zillions of those names, and that's when the UGC decided that, okay, let's just name it mass communication. I mean, for good or bad, that it was that let it be a BA or MA in mass communication, and that's how it began. But as I just told you in my opening remarks, that there's this whole political economy thing, especially in South India. We have all these wonderful engineering colleges, and they have lots of resources. So what do they do with it? Let's start a visual communication course, and probably the only, I mean, Sundeep would be knowing a lot more about that. So you have all these VisCom courses, bachelors of science in visual communication. So we have not only a bachelor of arts, but also bachelor of science. But again, this mishmash has its, as I said, I just spoke of the genesis, but it also had its problem, because then there was no specialization. So much so that many media organizations, did not want journalism students. So, I mean, just to take it, one point further, from what Dave was saying, that you don't need to have a journalism degree. In fact, at one point of time, having a journalism degree was regarded as some kind of an impediment. And I can't take names, but I have lots and lots of these anecdotal evidence. Oh, you have a journalism degree, so you better not be there. And then, you have all these big, the statesmen and the Times of India and India Today and everybody, all of them have their own media schools. So again, the same thing, so you are, dealing with an environment in an ecosystem where it's always journalism. Everybody wants to be, one of those anchors you see on screen, or they want to be one of those, media magnates, or they want to be, so as I just said, the persona of the journalist has been, very central in the Indian psyche. So whether you see films or whether you see serials or whether you see these stories and all, the journalist is always, a very, very interesting and a very important, character in all these things. So that's why, we were training journalists. And then again, as I said, all the other streams of, the film studies and management studies and all these things started coming up. And most often it was, Sunetra, they would, know about that as well. It was about, the board which was deciding the curriculum. So for example, if I am there, so I'll be, pitching for data journalism, I'll be pitching for mobile journalism, I'll be pitching for those things. And maybe if there is somebody else, he or she would be pitching for film studies, or would be pitching for as Surendranath was saying about those speech studies and all that. So we've not had a very good or we've not even had our psychological departments, like in the US and other places where they do a lot of work on related to media and communication. So there is that gap between our allied fields. Of late, we are having a lot of humanities related structures coming up. But again, as I said, this omnibus thing, it can't be broken down. We can't have so many departments simply because probably many of these departments are still run by one person who opens up the key in the morning, key to the room, and he switches off the light and he switches off the computer and all, and then there will be guest faculty who will be coming in and who would be doing that, and you'll have all those things. And then you have at the other end, those jazzy sets, which look straight out of a Bollywood set, and so you have these extremes, but that kind of a specialization that you would see in an American or a European university, we are far from that. And there are reasons, as I said, why would people do that? Just because, they want the knowledge component. And even as I said, the national education policy also talks about 50%, people being shifted to the vocational sector, and they say that vocational studies has got a bad branding, so let's take it out of it. So let's do it. So I think that this skill component and unfortunately, or fortunately, even skills of coding, etc., will have to be there, because we have to make people relevant for the industry, because we just can't be talking about the knowledge component. Of course, that's important, but that is already taken care of by some of our big universities. So we have all those elite universities with elite scholars, doing a lot on the knowledge front. But for the average student, it's the placement that matters. It's the amount, or the entrepreneurship that matters. So we are dealing with all these different pushes and pulls.
Thank you, Mashankarji. And I believe that this struggle also happened, as the field expanded and then maybe contracted a bit or went through different stages in United States too. There were many schools. Most of the schools started in English departments, English or rhetoric. Those were doing writing, and they started people teaching how to write stuff. And I think the flexibility. Professor Kiran Bala, talks about this trend where students, they want to do journalism because of many reasons, but then they realize there is not a lot of money into it. And journalism students who are trained in storytelling move to fields, such as event management and, other areas where they can use their skills. But, the fields which have different value sets driving them. So, she also talks about media institutions want to teach. So like the omnibus thing, reporting to filmmaking in 3 years. And I think, the way media education shapes up depends to a large extent upon the society we live in. In Indian society, there has been, a very strong, I think the film aspect has a very strong attraction. I was actually, involved with program development for a big technology education institution who wanted to, an engineering institution which wanted to do something on, on media. So a degree focused on media education. And they decided to go more on the production side, or, rather than on the data side, so like data analytics and those kind of aspects. So that was very interesting for me. We have feedback from Professor Roja, who talks about internet, mobile, and talks about communication as a set. Journalism is a subset. So thank you everyone for this round of comments. So now we are getting more specific to the technology aspect. So the question is, can you name what you think may be the most significant media innovation /S, so innovations in last 30 years? In your opinion, how well did our schools, journalism, communication, mass communication schools, did in responding to the rise of this innovation? So last 10, 15 years, I believe that media has been the field which has seen the highest degree of innovation, from internet to social media. It has changed the way societies work and all this stuff. Now, I don't want to be, technologically deterministic, but the idea was, and there were many other technologies which came out, a good number of them failed too. But the technologies that societies accepted and adopted and shaped, they became very powerful. So most of the innovations didn't come from, and I think that kind of makes me feel a bit disappointed, that most of these innovations did not come from schools of journalism and media. In fact, journalism and media didn't have much role to play in their evolution and adoption in public sphere. So a simple question, what do you think was the most important innovation or innovations in last 30 years? Do you think educational institutions, how do you think, your thoughts about how educational institutions responded to it? Starting with Deb.
Before I answer your question, may I make a little disclaimer, and it's a personal one. So it's almost a myth that we say that don't come into journalism because the salaries are low. Yes, the beginning salaries are low, but if somebody is a good journalist or a communicator, you can go very high. Like any South Asian family, my father wanted me to be an engineer, just like all good South Asian families have an array of engineers. He was an engineer, and I rebelled. I had no interest in engineering and the intricacies of engineering, but I had interest in communication. And I wanted to tell you, I don't drive a Rolls Royce to work every day. I don't want to. But I'm happy with what I have, and I feel every morning I have an engaging time. And also when I was a journalist, I had an engaging time going to work, and it felt very fulfilling. So I do want to say for all the students here, please don't worry about money. I think if you are worried about money, don't even worry about engineering. That's too much work. Just go to the stock market, because you can manage other people's money and make money out of it. So let's set that aside. So if you are in the business of making money, there are hundreds of places where you can do that. Journalism for most people, and it represents the people who are here, it's a passion. You got to like what you do. If you don't like what you do, then get off. And that's the best thing to do. And so don't come to journalism for the money, because the money comes later. And it's like the hazing that goes on. Initially, you have to survive with a lot of low wages. And that's the nature of the field. So I do want to address the question about what was the question? Can you repeat it? I forgot in my whole emotional reaction to your perspective.
It's a Deb. The question, what do you think was the most significant media innovation in last 30 years? How well do you think journalism, communication / mass communication institutions did, in educational institutions did, in responding to the rise of this innovation?
So that's an easy question to answer. As you know, you don't have to take my word for it. The internet revolutionized everything. But since 2008 or 2010, depending on when you got your mobile phone, the smartphone changed our perspective. The smartphone, as you know, led to the death of reading, period. Like now you have publishers in India and all over the world, they are developing long form reading on your mobile phone. So that was a great innovation, and that transformed our field. And third, which is coming in, which is data journalism. Data, the power of data. The only reason today you have Facebook, Google, and all these companies dominating the space is because they know about you better than you know about yourself. Let me explain. There are, all of us now are on our digital spaces, and there are companies that are tracking your habit. So I don't think journalism schools are doing a great job, or communication schools are doing a great job in teaching or researching this aspect of it. Because as you can see, earlier, the dominant aspects of communication were illustrated by a payback, like Times of India or the New York Times. They got money from advertising. That is what supported their content. CNN was supported by content and advertising. But in today's day and age, the big thing is what these entities know about you. That is why Google and Facebook are so powerful. They know about you, and that is why their main revenue stream is advertising. Our journalism schools have not done a good job of it. The second thing that I feel very strongly about, that this conference, the ICAN4, covers AI and other things. And as you can see, the AI aspects are rooted into engineering and computer science, like machine learning and other things. So our students really are very eager to learn that, but our faculty are not trained to do those coding, or they belong to a new generation. So there has to be a new relearning. So one of the ways you can solve that is you can collaborate with computer science and other engineering departments that can take care of the technology part of it, where the nitty-gritty of coding and other aspects of it, and all of the communication school can take care of the communication aspects. Think of that. All of us use a mobile app. The technology part of the mobile app is not something we have ever worried about, right? When you use Adobe, do you worry about how the image gets rasterized? In fact, raster is a term we don't even use. So these are things that are taken care at the back end of it, but we know what a good graphic is, what a great font is. So I feel as we are getting into the mobile space, our schools should be more geared towards designing these apps, feeding the information needs of the people. We are not doing that. And last but not the least, I think our school did something that has paid rich dividends. We went back to the basics. We realized that, good writing is important, good editing is important. You got to think of ideas. And I think those are the reading, thinking, and writing are most of the core elements that we focus on. And I know that that is the basic element, but that gives our students a great launching pad to learn anything. Because today, what I'm teaching in my class, that software, or what I'm researching, that software will not be there next year, maybe, or in 2 years. So what do? You teach your students the basic concepts or the key concepts of what they can use to grapple with. I mean, we all are here when Flash was a big interactive program. Now, Flash is almost on its way out, and you almost use other ways to put video on your mobile phones on the internet. So I feel that's where we should focus. But I'm afraid to say, besides teaching our students the basics, our journalism schools or communication schools are not doing a great job. We are behind.
Thank you, Deb. Your thoughts, Sundeep?
I agree with a lot Deb said. But in terms of, if you're looking at innovation in the last 30 years, the internet doesn't qualify because it's been around for more than that, right? So if you look at in the last 30 years, I think there are a couple of things that the World Wide Web obviously qualifies, but the primary innovation driving all this because of digital compression is convergence technologies, right? The convergence of communication, computing, and telephony. Those three have, one of the most common uses of that is the smartphone, but there are a lot of other uses. If you look at how they've changed your life in terms of social networking, in terms of predictive analytics, in terms of the ability of the ordinary consumer to be a producer and create different kinds of content. So all those I would combine under convergence technologies, right? Now, I agree. I also agree with what Deb said in terms of media schools not doing a good job, because media schools, especially in India, I think are carried away by the glamour of the technology. And an average communication student or media student in this day and age, we will live in sort of broadly what people refer to as a gig economy, where people change about 6 to 7 jobs before they settle in on a career. And that's true of every liberal arts major, even in the US, right? Over a period of time, you start small, you start with low wages, but as you go up and you accumulate all these skills that make you an intelligent producer and consumer and journalist or communication professional or PR professional, whatever area you're going on, the skill sets that you develop, right? The soft skills, the critical thinking, the problem solving, the writing, the ability to investigate something, research, or all those kinds of skills are the skills that media schools need to focus on. Those are the skills that are transferable, where whatever kinds of technology comes in, whatever kinds of challenges you face. And I think media schools can do a better job in that kind of thing. And based on what careers come in, based on what kinds of skills come in, there was a reference to this earlier about if you have a journalism degree from a school, then you're not fit to be a journalist. I think Shankar ji said that. Which is true, because I was talking to the editor of a journal and he said, we spent the first few months making them unlearn what they learned in journalism school. And that's true because media schools need to have a good partnership with the industry in terms of internships, in terms of on-the-job skill training kinds of things that move away from what is taught in the classroom to what is needed hands-on in the industry. And that's an area that needs to be worked on.
Thank you, Sundeep. Sunetra, your thoughts?
I agree with Sundeep when he says that, if it's 30 years ago and it's the US, then maybe it's digital technologies, convergence, and all that. And if you look at how communication schools were at the forefront in terms of using that, then I think very early in the US, you did have programs of, in communication schools, which were looking at the non-engineering aspects like telecommunications policy or information policy, compared to other parts of the world. And also these modules were being incorporated into the curriculum in other programs, which were not just for looking at telecom policy or something. So while we had that in the US, in terms of India, I think there's no doubt about it. If you're looking at 30 years, then it is the internet. So there is that lag between what people were talking about in the US in the mid-90s. Definitely was only being just talked about like 1 decade later. But of course, we know the speed with which the mobile phone spread across India. And there are lots of communication studies to look at how I mean, the communication aspects of spreading of so many different technologies post that. But if we look at the impact of the internet in India in terms of communication, schools and education, I think it did go some distance in leveling the playing field. At least as a scholar, there are very few communication and media schools which had good libraries prior to the arrival of the internet. IMC was one of them, which had one of the best communication libraries in India. But for other scholars, it was very difficult, to reach that level of scholarship. I think the internet, and with a lot of eventual appearance of free non-database, let's say Nexus articles being there, so scholars could access that, and they could write and they could read and they could improve their knowledge capabilities, and hence improve the kind of education they were imparting. So I think that was the immediate. And one last thought. When we look at the trajectory of media education, and we get closer to the current time from 30 years ago till now, there is a bias that technologies, like somebody said, one of the previous speakers about, the device. When in India, I think we are really biased towards, we are the glitziness of the device or the technology, but there's not enough emphasis in the curriculum of the theoretical aspects of media and society in using that device or in using that technology. So that remains a lacuna in the curriculum. It's very hard to get people to think theoretically about, okay, what is the psychological aspects of the spread of social messaging in India. Let's just take one example. Whereas everybody will tell you, okay, there are 540 million people are using Facebook, but what is it doing to people? How are they using it? All those are things are much harder to explore.
Thank you, Sunetra. And I completely agree. One of the things that I noticed, when I was a student, and social media was coming up. Facebook in early 2010s, 2011, 12, Arab Spring and all those things, people were very excited with the idea of, of an American innovation being the harbinger of democracy in the rest of the world. And we really did not think about it critically. So, and now, around 8 to 10 years later, we are dealing with issues like, disinformation. I don't believe that we ever talked about it very seriously. We did talk about misrepresentation a bit, and that was happening on MySpace and all this stuff, but issues related to privacy, issues related to mass scale persuasion, like Cambridge Analytica and all those things. So I think that the criticality part, we did miss somewhere, down the road. We got so excited with the technology that, we decided, or, we couldn't be critical. And remember, being critical is a very abstract process. So you are thinking about what would happen, something that has not happened yet. So that challenge is already there. And I see some comments, about blockchain, that the idea that it will bring in transparency, establish a system. And there is wide endorsement for Deb's, emotional expression about, the passion of journalism. So that is there. Umar Shankarji, your thoughts?
Yeah, so according to me, I mean, 2 or 3 things, in conjunction with each other. One is broadband technology. I mean, the existence of a high-speed internet, that was one major game changer for many of these media schools. The second one was those cheap Chinese phones, which everybody could buy, and it could click pictures and it could record videos. I remember, I mean, during the 80s and 90s, doing a computer course was such a big thing in India. You had all those programs, and I remember one company, I don't even know whether it's there, it was called GNet. And we all used to say that if you do that course with G8, you can live happily ever after. There is no problem with that. But the other the media schools remained resistant to technology for a long time. And it was a conjunction of 4 factors. I mean, I'll use Raghunath Mashelkar, Padma Vibhushan's, the STEP paradigm. Social awareness. When that social awareness started, that was what got a lot of things going. The existence of accessible technology, he calls it the economics of it, and most importantly, public policy. I mean, in the early 2000s, we had the NAC coming up. It's called the National Assessment and Accreditation Council. And that is when a lot of our old colleges and universities, started having a fresh, painting maybe in 5 decades. And that is when people started buying computers. That is when people started, spending money on infrastructure and all. That is when the media schools started changing, because I remember having done my MA and doing page design on that dummy paper, and we would used to draw that, this is where the picture would be, this is where things would be. We did not have a computer to work on, as late as the mid 90s. And in the early 2000s also, many of those local stories were that the fisheries department is now having a website. The excise department will have a new website. So having a website was such a major thing. And now just see the stereotype of the, information and communication technology adept Indian. I mean, you go to Google and you hear people talking in Hindi and in Telugu and all these words. You think that you are in India. I mean, they're doing so well. So we have the, that high-end human capital doing very well with computer technology and all. The existence of that technology and the availability of this broadband technology and free and open source software and many such things in smaller towns and in smaller institutes and in all these places has heralded so many of these maybe smaller startups, so many people doing design and this and that, or bringing up a small newspaper. The number of small newspapers in India is probably the highest in the world. So there is a lot of empowerment, and digital technology now is poised for the next stage. And I dare repeat, the same old thing that, no power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. So probably, there's this digital empowerment of you using digital technology to showcase your talents and all that, because we are indeed poised for that jump. We are indeed poised for that particular change, because all the the digital editions of newspapers, etc., are just a replica of the offline, of the print editions. So we still haven't come to that interactive part. We still haven't, kind of taken full use of the technology that is available. And another, thing of public policy which is going to change is the national fiber network. Linking up all the 5 lakh village panchayats with high-speed broadband. That is going to bring about a lot of change. So technology, especially accessible broadband technology, and this as I said, the mobile phones is what has made a lot of these media schools a lot more relevant, than they otherwise would be. Because again, just to repeat the point that I made earlier, that employability, getting a job at the end of it is very, very, very important. Of course, passion is so very important. Of course, many of us, who started off into journalism, we didn't do it for money. But beyond a point, you need to think of employability and all. So I'm sure that we are just poised to enter a new field in media and journalism industry as it is, because a lot of those jobs are no longer there. A lot of those big newspaper houses are no longer there. Many of our friends, they've lost their jobs, but they are coming up with web portals the next day. I just, that is seen to be believed. There are so many in Bengali, and they are making money because they've been, doing it for quite a long time. So many of these things, with keeping the user experience at center. So we are, as I said, going to make full use of these affordances that digital technology has to offer.
Thank you, Mashankarji. Very well said. So now we are in the last 30 minutes of the discussion. I see some comments. So I asked audience a question about the important technologies for the future. I get, blockchain. Sunetra talks about augmented reality being very important. Sundeep, talks about, and I think that's a very important point, the idea of technological determinism. We often get swayed with the potential of the technology. We try to see the technology, we see the technology the way we want to see it, I would say, but the idea that society does, have a role to play and many other factors in how a technology develops. Think about it, had the pandemic not been there, would Zoom be such a big thing? Would we be having these virtual conferences? Had the pandemic not been there, maybe, Zoom would have taken, or maybe Zoom would have, died in competition with Microsoft Teams and Skype and all those things. So a lot of factors are at play, and the society, for example, a society like India, where less than 50% of the population has access to the internet, in such a country, and even the rest of them do not, there are limitations, other limitations like language. Internet is mostly English, and a lot of people who have access to internet may, not have access to English, cognitive abilities and or skills and those kind of things. So, a very important, observation, Sundeep. Thank you for that. And Sumantha talks about, Sumantha Sarthi Das, Professor Das talks about artificial intelligence with emotions. So more humanized, maybe more palatable to for human interaction. So with all that done, let's move to the future. What do you think is going to be an important innovation that will work with the society, that will succeed? Because in the past, if you remember, there were a lot of innovations that failed. You don't even remember them anymore. So what's going to be an important innovation for the future, and how do you think the jobs will change in the in the media industry? So what will we be preparing our students for? So storytelling is there, right? So that's something that I had this discussion 10 years ago, and we were still saying that storytelling is what we do. We do it in different contexts, but it's going to be storytelling. But in terms of industries, how do you see things moving in terms of what kind of jobs we are preparing our students for, beyond just the storytelling? So your thoughts, starting with Deb.
So one of the things I do want to mention that when you think about the future is already here with us. So first thing is that I think a lot of our institutions focus on teaching our students skills. I would like all of us to also focus on research. In my class, I teach an undergraduate class of 300 students. I have incorporated undergraduate research, and you won't believe the results have been fascinating. Why? Because these younger generation, they understand technology. They understood TikTok before I did. And so they can find interesting examples once you teach them how to research it. Because in an industry, or whenever you are trying to prepare for a great job, I think people can know how to write, that's basic. People know how to communicate, that's basic. People should know how to edit a video and all of that stuff. So that's now like standard. Nobody. But the capacity to do research or the capacity to find a research problem and solve it is an important tool. And I urge all of our schools to kind of focus on that, because we are teaching too much of content which can be available from our mobile phones. So a student can know some of the basic facts. And I think too many of our classes are teaching basic facts, which I think our students already know. So that makes some of our classes boring. The second thing I would say, that it's easy to talk about technology, but let's also focus on the negative aspects of technology. I don't think we focus on the negative aspects of technology, and that makes our students critical thinkers. And last but not the least, I would just echo some of our panelists who have said it so well, is to have links with our industry. I think mass media is one of the few industries that does not follow what's happening in academia. For example, think of the vaccine that got developed. That vaccine got developed in research labs, and some of them are academic research labs like Oxford and other places that developed that. But I always ask everybody that when Facebook got launched, Mark Zuckerberg did not go into a research lab in academia. So some college professor did not find the idea for Facebook. So in many ways, our industry is leading the field, and we are just following them. So in many ways, education in media has to be flipped, where our classrooms and our labs, our campuses should be hotbeds of ideas. So one of the things we did at UNC Chapel Hill, that we developed a campus newsroom. So our students go and cover stories. This is not the campus newspaper. The campus newspaper, the Daily Tar Heel, does a great job. It's not associated with our school, although most of our students are working as journalists there. What we did was a lab newspaper that is not a lab newspaper. That basically is known as the Media Hub, where our students work on stories that are adopted by or published by the local media entities. As you know, there has been a lot of journalists who have lost their jobs, and so newsrooms do not have so many eyes and ears to cover stories. So our students do professional quality stories that are adopted, so they get a byline. Even before they have graduated, they have gotten prominent bylines in prominent broadcast entities. So that has really helped us, and we have a Hearst Award, which is like the Pulitzer Prize of college journalism, open to all accredited schools. So our school, which is the Husman School, has a record of winning it for the last 8 years. We have been in top 5, and we have won top 5 in last 7. So this did not happen overnight. What we have done is we have developed a conscious effort to not only treat our students as students, but treat them as professionals who lead our field with their research acumen and with their understanding of the future of the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Sundeep?
So, I mean, I agree with everything Deb said, but in terms of storytelling, going back to storytelling, I think there is storytelling, and there's more ways in which you can use storytelling, right? So if you look at how PayPal uses it, one of my friends is part of the fraud division at PayPal in Chennai. And he was talking about how they build a story about every user. So if you're buying tickets to go to Greece or Lebanon or somewhere, and then you have a credit card charge in Lebanon 6 hours later or 10 hours later, then it helps them make the link, right? They're building that story around that person. But it's also important when they apply that to detecting fraud. If you've not left your city and there's no track of what you bought, and you get charged in Lebanon, then it's an automatic red flag. So what I'm getting at is the storytelling, building the narrative has become important in every field, not just journalism and not just, and it comes with a lot of different levels to it. But in terms of innovations of the future, I think we are headed to a world where we are talking about wearable technologies, right? invisible, made invisible because of nanotechnologies in computing, but becoming wearable. And that will lead to a lot of, kinds of new technologies that will become like glam in a lot of ways. But I'll go back to what we need to stress on, which Deb also talked about, which is the skills that are transferable. Not only the skill sets in terms of producing content, but also in terms of your personality, your problem solving, leadership, critical thinking, writing. Those kinds of skills are what we need to concentrate on and build for the future.
Thank you, Sundeep. Sunetra?
I think at this juncture, it seems particularly difficult to look into the crystal ball and say, even 5 years down the line, what the next wave of technology will be. Because had the pandemic not happened, we would not be, in a video conference. So many of us in India would not be watching entertainment on OTT because it really increased during the pandemic. People would still be reading more physical copies of newspapers and not going to the digital version. So many people more would not have bought smartphones and got onto a messaging service. So these were kind of accelerated by the appearance of a pandemic. I think it's easier to just talk about the next year or two, from our trajectory of media educators. I just see if things continue like this with, the waves of Corona for the next year, year and a half, we will definitely see a deepening of more education through video conferencing and using more of social messaging to create communities for students or students amongst themselves, subgroups to give that more interactive feel. So we just see a deepening of that. But all this is like if we take this technological determinist view, which you also mentioned, we should always be wary. We have to also realize that in many parts of the world, big tech is actually in a standoff with the state. So in countries around the world, these, whether it's Brazil or whether it's other countries, there are laws which are being questioned in the Supreme Court or whatever. There are changes in laws which are looking at the degree of freedom that the big tech companies would have, because that is going to make a huge difference to the communication environments, even as it pertains to media education. Because for today, while we are using video conference, a lot of us are using Google Meet because at some point Zoom, because of the privacy considerations, being a government institute, we were not encouraged to use Zoom. So while we continue to use Google Meet and whatnot, a lot of our administrative work in running a class or running a department or interacting with students is through WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is cheap, it's data light, students have it on their smartphones. So I don't see that it helps in administration of class. If you have a problem, you can have a video call among students, 3-4 groups of them are working on WhatsApp, because many of them, the mobile connectivity is expensive. So we have to take realities of how much they can spend. What will regulation be vis-a-vis big tech? Everything is not in a vacuum where, technology is just going to advance without any hurdles. So all these things are very much up in the air in many countries, and it remains to be seen how that pans out. And regarding the workplace, just a quick, the skills that continue to be important, I really think are being able to create good content. Many of our students today are not just going into a newspaper or a radio or a TV, they're going into web portals where they need to know multimedia, they need to know how to write a short story, how to put a video, how to put an audio. And additionally in India, a lot of the job market is such that if you're bilingual, you have an edge. So if you can translate that same content across languages, that's an added, because we've seen a along with explosion in vernacular channels, we are also seeing explosion in vernacular digital websites of content, which may not be formal news portals, but they could be specific to, like, say, development in a sector or a particular community, a farming community. They need communication programs. It could be, these could all be in the vernacular. So we are seeing a lot of people getting jobs in these kind of portals, or I don't even know what to call them. And they're not all news. They could be in development, or they could be in gender, or they could be in specific areas. But a lot of our students are working in these places. They're writing the content, they're developing small videos, and I don't see that changing anytime too soon.
Thank you, Sunetra. Now, before we have, before I invite Umashankarji, this is the last round. Umashankarji would be the last person to respond. Audience, if you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to to type them in the chat window. I see Anita Parihar's comment about about bridging the divide or the distance between the industry and the academia, and I think that's what Deb was also talking about by encouraging client-based projects. She talks about this very interesting project which she did with her students, where her students worked with on a medical project. So thank you, Anitaji, for sharing that. Now, Umashankar, your thoughts.
Yeah, so the innovation for me, is in two different areas. One is in the media education or education as it is, and the other is in the industry part. So as I said, education will be or is guided a lot by public policy. And if I take the last document, which is the National Education Policy document, so there are talks about change in assessment, and that is a very, very important thing. The assessment that we have today is really very outdated. And just a small anecdotal story. One of my staff members, his small daughter, she doesn't want to study because she says that porikha hochhe na, there are no examinations, so why should I study? So when we have examination-based assessments, we have all those problems. So we will be having a lot of things on self-assessment that this document talks about peer assessment, about continuous assessment, about project-based assessment. So this is what one change that is going on. And I'm sure many of you would have realized, I mean, with Dave and with Sundeep ji and Jatin ji, we've been talking so much about, pedagogy, that what are the things that we could, incorporate, because that is one place that we still need a lot of improvement, or we still need a lot of these fresh ideas. And we are thankful to that, AJ, teaching divisions and all that, we used to get a lot of, how to teach this or that, or at least know ideas, and of course to adopt that in a local context. That is very important. One problem with our education infrastructure has been the concentration on the high-end human capital. We've had those wonderful institutes of technology and the institutes of management or whatever, but the middle level, the universities and colleges and all, they have been given a short shrift for a number of reasons. But technology has made this a more level playing field, and we will, as I said, we are looking at a more, if I can use the management lingo, a more design thinking approach, where we have the user experience at the center. It's no longer, where the editor is know all and he knows what the editor, what the reader would want to read. I mean, Devda would know, about the 80s and 90s. We had, I can name the news, paper, the Statesman. And if we got a local news in the Statesman, we knew it had to be very big, because, they had decided that the audience does not require news from Calcutta. And then, we had Akbar Saab coming and changing everything for. So, a lot of this will be, based, I mean, that is how the system here is. We will be having a lot of innovators, I mean, in the media education curriculum, in the media industry space and whatever, and bringing in these ideas. And thanks to this digital technology, and as Sunetra was saying about, this pandemic making this possible, because otherwise it might have taken 10 years before we knew that Zoom was a platform, and we could have a Google Meet meeting, with people sitting in Ohio and North Carolina and Hartford and all these places. So that has added to a lot of those things. So again, as I said, this network that has been formed, or these affordances that are there, and I spoke of the free and open source movement, or the free and open source technology. And of course, a lot of these things are so very easy and so very accessible. For example, a very small thing like WordPress technology, or these content management systems, where you don't have to know HTML to create, manageable news portals or whatever. And they are actually happening. And just to repeat Sunetra's point once again about the internet itself becoming vernacular. When you will have all these people, millions and millions of them from Tamil Nadu, from Telangana, from Andhra Pradesh, from Karnataka, from Odisha, from UP and Bihar, which has combined population of more than what the United States has. So when you have all these things coming up, we'll have a lot of the internet itself becoming vernacular, and a lot more of the even international digital space. It's already happening about dubbing and about those translation and all those kind of activities. So whether it's about mobile apps, or whether it is user directed content, whether it is the way we teach, whether it's the way we consume, all these things are, as I said earlier, they are poised for change, and we are in for some very, very exciting times.
Thank you, Shankarji. So we are coming close to the end of our time for this panel. I have this comment from Professor Ojha, and he talks about the pace that industry changing is difficult to cope for many institutions, especially the government and universities are stuck in formalities to quickly adopt and work on new challenges. He asks if it is the same outside the India. So all the and I think these are very important. These are very important questions, and we would probably talk more about it on another forum some other time. But these are questions which go to the root of how we have to deal with or how we can respond with, or how we have to do better in responding to these challenges or these innovations. So with that, let's end the session. Thank you very much, all the participants, all the panelists for being here. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Sundeep. Thank you, Sunetra. And thank you, Shankarji. And thank you, all the audience members, for your comments. Thank you, all the students who were here. And I hope there was something useful for you. Thank you to the anchors and Dr. Amrish Saxena and Dr. Susmita Bala and Manmeet for being here and being a part of the organizing effort. Thank you very much, everyone.
Such an insightful session we had. Sincere thanks to Dr. Jatin Srivastava, Dr. Dev, Dr. Sen, Dr. Sundeep, and Dr. Shankar for putting and engaging the fruitful discussion about the future of media education. We have and discussed about various innovations in the media industry over the years, and have tried to look into those existing and also the upcoming innovations and avenues in the media field. Thank you, esteemed panelists. Now, I request Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, to please share her views and give the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Kshitij. Thank you. Media education has various facets, be in India or any other part of the country. I think this is a time of convergence. So we have to think of developing a more integrated media education. Our panelists, Professor Dev Aikat, Professor Sundeep Muppidi, Professor Sunetra Narayan, Dr. Shankar Pandey have expressed diverse opinions. This means we need to continue debating this issue. Thanks, Dr. Jatin Srivastava, for moderating this session and bringing to us a lot of new thoughts. Thanks to all of you as panelists, and thanks to everyone joined here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Once again, I'd like to thank all our guests for an inspiring and informative session. I would also like to extend my gratitude to Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Convener ICAN4, and Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, and Chief Associate Convener ICAN4 for the entire ideation and planning of all the sessions. I would like to thank Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari, Ms. Manmeet Kaur, Ms. Shruti VS, Ms. Mudita Raj, Ms. Krishna Pandey, Mr. Mohit Kishore Vats, Mr. Pramod Kumar Pandey for their constant support and guidance. A heartfelt thanks to Mr. Ritik Ghosh, Mr. Sumantra Sarthidas, Mr. Sachin Nair, and Mr. Yogesh Sharma for providing the overall digital operations in ICAN4.
I would like to thank our newsletter team comprising of both students and faculty members, namely Ms. Sukriti Arora and Dr. Teenam Bora for constantly supervising and mentoring the team. And also I thank Mr. Mohammad Kamil and Ms. Krishna Pandey for working around the clock in all the press proceedings. You can check our press proceedings on the official Facebook page of ICAN.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Anmol Mehta from our DME family and Mr. Sumohit Nirala from one of our knowledge partners, KR Mangalam University, and for tirelessly working in making our events look more beautiful digitally with the help of their prolific designs. I would also like to thank our entire team, all faculty members, and students who have worked day and night, facing all the challenges and obstacles of the pandemic to make this conference happen.
Lastly, I thank our audience for being here and contributing. I hope you all have given us your precious feedback. If not, then please do it now. The link is being shared in the chat box. For all the new updates, stay in touch with us through our social media handles. The links have been shared in the chat box. And don't forget to visit the DME website and the ICAN4 website for any or all the details.
And here we completed day 6, the second edition of World's first 10-day Digital Live International Conference, ICAN4. We are looking forward to 4 more days filled with knowledge, expertise, and deliberations on a diversity of topics. The sessions scheduled for day 7, that is tomorrow, are a master class on changing dynamics of journalism and its impact on society in the wake of COVID 19, presided by Professor KG Suresh at 10 a.m. IST. We'll be having the 6th technical session on the topic Integrated Marketing Communication in the Era of Social Media and Artificial Intelligence by Dr. Sapna MS at 11:30 a.m. IST. Then there's another masterclass planned on communication technologies for effective transmission of media messages by Professor Ranjit Sharma at 3 p.m. IST. And then the final session for tomorrow is the workshop on the emerging technology in journalism 360-degree virtual reality storytelling practical and approachable by Mr. Aaron Atkins, Assistant Professor, Weber State University, USA at 6:30 p.m. IST. With an excitement to see you all tomorrow in this wonderful lineup of sessions, I, Kshitij Sharma,
and I, Khushi Chaudhary,
take your leave for today. Good night, take care, stay safe.